Hey friends, I'm so excited to be releasing 4 episodes that I recorded earlier this year in preparation for the release of my book, The Hidden Piece. These episodes are with some dear friends, and I think they're deeply theological, extremely practical, and I think they're just going to be personally helpful. And so for this first episode, I can't wait for you to hear from my friends Hilary and Chris Tyrell. All right, well, I'm here with my friends, Chris and Hillary. Y'all are just so amazing on so many levels. And honestly, one of the coolest experiences, Chris texted me and was like, hey, we're going to be in your area, and would you and your wife, would you and Britt want to come and hang out? And I was like, wait a minute, I keep track of where you guys are. I'm like, this is not listed on your tour. You know, he's like, and you're like, oh yeah, it's kind of like a private event. Like, don't tell anybody. I don't know. So I'm already breaking the rules. I'm now telling people on like, you know, a whole podcast, but it was so cool. And we got to hear some of your songs, like for the new album and the tour that you guys are on. And it was just like, it was so fun. So I wanted to just say publicly, thank you.
We know people who know people with secrets.
Hey, we will always. You are more than welcome to walk through the front door, but if you want to sneak through the back, you will always bring. Like, come on.
Amazing. Well, hey, I want to ask. So here, I've never done this before, but I'm going to do too. Might feel a little bit uncomfortable, but you know, uncomfortability is a great thing. I want people to get to know you, and I'd love for you. It's always the awkward thing, like, hey, introduce yourself. But I've got the both of you here, so here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask Chris, and here's what's super important. You've got to go all out. Like the best of the best intro. Like we're not doing any of the, well, yeah, Hilary kind of sings. Like, don't do that. Like, let's just, like, you get to, yeah, we're recording video. So if you want to do the dance, you can do that. But like, you introduce Hill, and then Hill, you introduce Chris. But Chris, I'm going to give you the honors to go first.
Well, this is my beautiful bride. My bride of almost 12 years, Hilary. She is an incredible mother. She is a really, really incredible friend. Probably the best big sister I've ever witnessed. And she's the love of my life. She is really creative. She's incredibly creative. She's incredibly generous with her time and with her energy. And she also is a really great singer and songwriter. Is that true?
And for our friends that might not know that she's part of this band called, and she might have, I don't know, won a couple of awards.
She's also in a band called Lady A, country trio. She's one of the lead singers for that. She's been doing that for about 17 years now. And yeah, she's on the road a lot, and then she flies back in and out and drives back in and out, and is an incredible mom and wife. So she has to do a lot of running back and forth and jumping in and out of full-time work mom, CEO work mom, and then back and forth, juggling that.
Great.
That's awesome. Okay, Hill, your turn.
This is Chris Tyrell, my husband of almost 12 years. And we have 3 beautiful children. He is, first of all, an incredible husband and an incredible father. So hands-on and intentional. Lives by such a beautiful example. One of the most self-disciplined human beings I've ever met in my life. And I don't mean it's like a OCD type. I just mean like intentional, like with his time. And I aspire to be more like him and am inspired by that. I love that he has such a heart for children, especially like our kids' generation. He has a heart for just giving everyone the opportunity to dig in deeper to who they are, and really more than that, who God has created them to be. Chris has been a stay-at-home dad for 5.5 years and has been so unbelievably patient and just wakes up every day and does what I will go on record and say would have been impossible for me to do. And I am so thankful for that and the way that we co-parent. And I think he's one of the smartest people in the entire world. And so I'm really excited for this next chapter for him. That is still very unknown, but all of our kids are in school now. And so there's a whole lot of excitement and good that's coming. You're the oldest of 4. very much a big brother, has a big heart for just families, and I think men in leadership roles and wanting them to stay healthy, especially in just ministry space. And I basically made it into your resume, but there you go.
There you go. That's so good. Okay, now I'm going to brag about the both of you for just a little bit. Hill, you wrote a song called Thy Will, and that has wrecked my family and our ministry team, our mutual friend Lisa Turkhurst, Jim Kress. We were just talking about Jim offline. There's a marked moment at the end of every Haven Place retreat that we do together. I bring the theology, Jim brings the therapy, and Lisa always jokes. She says she brings the problems, the everyday problems, but she's bringing the brilliant Bible teaching as well. And there's this marked moment at the very end of our session where we play your song, you know, and it's just this sacred moment of surrender. Like literally we'll put our hands out, you know, and just a sacred moment of surrender. So I want to thank you for your faithfulness and just for your love for Jesus. Chris, you are truly brilliant. You texted me, you're like, hey, what are your notes? Because I'm teaching a theology class on, and I was like, well, it's like my dissertation. I'm not quite sure you want, and you're like, give it to me, send it to me. And you might be like, I think 3 people have read my dissertation, my 2 advisors, and like, not even my mom. She probably didn't make it through. So you're the 3rd one. You're like the one that actually worked through it. So you've got a brilliant mind for theology. You're a prayer warrior. I'm so excited, man. I'm so excited for what God's doing in your life and through you. But you're about to say something, but I want to just keep showering the praises.
I was thankful you'd even send it to me because I figured that was the case. That probably not a lot of people are asking you for your presentation. So I really do enjoy it.
That's amazing. Okay, I got one more question that we're going to get into what I'm really excited to talk about. But I'm starting each of these conversations with this question. And the question is, I'm actually really bad at fill in the blank. So, Hill, I'm actually really bad at, how would you fill in the blank?
Saying I'm sorry. Yeah. Hopping right into the deep end. Yeah, I'm bad at saying I'm sorry, especially my husband. It's way easier to say it to my kids. And I'm talking to the Lord about that because I need to get right. But it's hard for me. And I think and then to kind of, are you going to ask the follow-up or just answer what I'm bad
at? Let's start with that. And then I'm going to go, and then I'm going to ask the follow-up. And here's the follow-up. So that's an awareness of limitations, right? Like that's an awareness of a weakness. And typically that's also part of humility. And so through humility, you've learned.
Okay. What I've learned through humility, with trying to get better at saying I'm sorry, is that it's the fastest way to repair with the person that you are apologizing to. I also, it doesn't always mean that there aren't consequences or, distance between you and the person because you really hurt them, or just time that's needed for the other person. But I really do believe that it offers you the greatest opportunity to repair that relationship. And ultimately, it also just, I feel like you're getting right with the Lord at the same time because you are apologizing, and there's freedom in that confession and in that apology. So not good at it, but working on it.
That's so good. That's so good. All right, Chris, I'm really bad at.
Oh, I could go on and on. I mean, it was really funny is asking her to answer that kind of question for me. You want to do some marital counseling? Let's swap.
Hey, I was gonna do that, but then I was like, I didn't prep him for this, and I'm not sure what we're gonna get. And Jim's not with me right now, so I'd be running road.
Don't unravel that yarn ball right there. Yeah. So if I answer to myself, I would say I'm really bad at not just having needs base level. It's just having needs in general, but feeling like I have to know everything no matter what is being asked, even in the little just day to day. If I don't know something, I'm very quick to be irritated back at whoever asked me something. So, the more conversational, topical way is I can get snippy really quickly if I'm posed with a question and I'm not really sure what the answer is. And for some reason, it's hard. I know some of the reasons why, but it's hard for me to just say, yeah, I really don't know, or I haven't checked on that yet. You know.
Right. Right. And then the second part of it is through humility, you've
Through
learned.
humility, I've learned that it's okay to say I don't know.
Mhm.
Now the game is to practice that and get more fluid in that being okay. So it's a journey
Yeah.
to. Because it's one thing to say that in bigger ways, but it's odd when I catch myself getting snappy about meaningless. You know, did you did you get
Mm.
gas in the car? And I'm annoyed that you're asking me if I got gas in the car when it's really not an attack. Why am I snapping even a little ways? You know, that kind of thing.
Or even just like,
Right.
it's a good
Right.
example,
Right.
but even just like calendar changes, our family calendar. Did you let the babysitter know we need her an hour earlier? And he's like, oh, like, or what do you think? Those are the moments where I feel like we
You're
have a
just asking.
tendency to like, hey, I don't need to know the answer. I just need to know if you know or if you're figuring it out.
She's just thinking
Mm.
that I'm
Yeah,
taking
that's
it
so good.
personally that she's doubting me that I didn't do that. You know, that kind of like, oh, why am I snapping at you? You just want, that's
Right, right. Yeah, no, I think that's so good. I think like one of the things that I found like as I've been working through this book, it's called The Hidden Peace, and it's about really claiming and reclaiming an ancient virtue of biblical humility. That the Christian life, the soil of the Christian life ought to be humility. All the fruit of the spirit are actually cultivated in the soil of humility. And yet, and this is such an intriguing thing, I'm so curious to get your guys' viewpoint. It seems like, this is just my perception, right? I could be totally wrong. It seems like our culture at large is running as far away from humility as possible. Like I even had some friends, like really good, like meaning people that I love them. They love the Lord completely. And they're like, Joel, a first book for you on humility, like that might not sell that well, like, and I like was poking at that and I was like, you're right. Like, and that was just kind of an acceptance for me. I'm like, this is not something that our world loves. It seems to be something. So I'm curious from your guys' standpoint, Hill, in the music business. And I mean, you are on platforms consistently where the temptation for pride and glory and all of those things come in. And I've got a, hi, Am. Hi. You want to say hi?
Hello, beautiful girl.
how you doing, MJ?
Say hi. You doing good? Yeah? You want to listen to our conversation? Okay. We're pride. And I mean, you're on these stages and what is your feel like if somebody were to come and be like, hey, you need some more humility, or, what is your view of the role of humility in the context of what you do on a day in and day out basis?
I think it's really, I think it's a crucial part of life. I think you are writing this book. I'm so thankful that the Lord gave it to you, because we do need to enter into those hard places. That's where we need to go. That is really, I think, when I think about just when I start my day and get to the end of my day and I'm in the most proud of how I lived that day, it's when I've started from that posture of humility and been mindful of it. I think for me and my journey in this career, there are a lot of people that work alongside me every day to kind of help me do a lot of things that in typical day-to-day life career I would be doing on my own. Like we like to call it in the music business, in our entertainment business, you learn a little bit of like learned helplessness, because there are so many people involved in helping you get from point A to point B so we can stay in our process and focus on the show and all these things. And with that can come this like, and not all the time is it even conscious. It's this like, there's this everything is run around what I need, what we need, what the band needs. And it can be hard to re-enter into our home, for example, and go, oh yeah, that's not how it goes here. Like, and just having to relearn that and knowing that at the root, that some of that is a lack of humility or pride, and having to be reminded, like, there's grace for it because reentry is challenging when this is your rhythm, like in and out of town. And it's also really important to remember, like, how to shift that thinking, how to shift my heart, and also shift it on the road too. I mean, that's the other part, the things that I've learned and how to be just pursuing humility. And I, as we were kind of talking to you, it's like, I feel like humility is something that is really praised in friendship, but not so much in business. It's like,
wow,
in business, you should present yourself as this like super self-confident, borderline arrogant, in the way that you just believe in yourself and you believe that you're going to be successful and all of that. And I've learned that the places in which I've connected the most with the people that I work alongside and with, or in front of, it's when you are in that really humble, and I would also say vulnerable place, to be able to level and connect, and that's where the good stuff is. It's that's where the real that's where success is to me, is in that connection. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes.
I would say for you, and especially in your business environment, it's like one of the most beautiful things about her heart and her posture in that, how she lives that out, is out on the road, pretty much in any scenario, even in award shows or TV performances, almost everyone that comes in and out of the room is technically there to work for her in some form or fashion. So it's already innately set up that you walk in as the artist or one of the artists, as like everyone's waiting on you or showing up in that sense of, they know their job is to do certain things for you, but she is always postured as anyone who walks in the room she wants to engage with as a new friend. And there's always that disarming, a lot of people don't know what to do with it, because she's looking at the coffee runner in New York City and she just wants to stop and ask how their day's going, and they're just totally caught off guard because it's supposed to just be the boss and I'm just giving the coffee and trying to not get yelled at. And she's like, how are you doing today?
Right. Yeah. Which I think is such a profound thing, a profound opportunity that you have. I was studying 2 Corinthians 5 earlier today, the ministry of reconciliation, that Christ is making his appeal in and through us. And Hilary, I just think we would probably just know that person as the coffee runner, they've got the job and whatever else. But in the eyes of God, the person has a name, a story, a life, a trajectory that's going. And what a beautiful moment that you stopped because of, I would say, humility, of an awareness of who God is, which then helps you to know who you are, which then frames the reality of how you interact with other people. So humility prevents us from thinking too highly of ourselves, but protects us from thinking too lowly of ourselves, which then is so powerful when we're in relationship with other people. And you gave such an immense gift, because, it's wow, that was literally an experience with the Jesus inside of Hilary that was connecting with the image bearer of God, that who knows, they were even connected to that reality, but that could be just a powerful moment. And so I love that. And I say this about my boss, Lisa Turkers. I say this about the two of you, definitely you, Hill. You guys, you're a better person off stage than you are on stage. And I can't honestly say that about a lot of everybody. We've seen the horror stories, and so I'm just so grateful for that level of humility. And so I've got a couple difficult questions that I'm going to ask, but before I get to that, I do want to ask, Hill, what have you done in your life to protect you from the pitfalls of pride? Because one of the things I wrote in the book is that pride is a guide that promises to take us to paradise and deceitfully leads us into a prison. So what have you done in your life with Chris, with your family, that gave you that inclination, I'm really busy, but I'm going to stop and I'm going to engage in a real relatable way with this person who's bringing me coffee, that if you're like me, that is the most vital job of all jobs to have, is to get me oh my gosh, I am. Yeah. So talk us through that.
First and foremost, it is by the grace of God. I mean, truly, and God sending me a husband who just holds me accountable and is just supportive in that way. And I believe there are a lot of people that I know and I don't know that are praying for me, and I fully believe in that power and just that covering. And then I think some of it has to just, it's not, and honestly, I don't really think that this is humility, and I'm such a relational person. God created me to be such a relational person. I love like being in a band because I can collaborate. I love the collaborative experience. I love just connecting with people. And so I think some of that just naturally I get so excited about learning about people that I forget like what I'm there for sometimes, or like if it's a work situation, I just get so excited to connect. And so I think that is a part of who God just created me to be. And then humility and the fact that I am in a band with two other people. So it's not just about one of us, it's we're a trio. And then again, you could say the same thing about our family. It's not just one of us, it's all five of us, And so I think just being mindful about not being the only one in the room, or or having that heart posture is, yeah. And I think ultimately to bookend it, it is just by the grace of God, and really, as I've gotten older, just wanting to daily just pursue him in a real way. And there were definitely seasons in my life where that was not the case. And so there's several stories from back then that would not reflect well on me, but just getting serious about my faith, I think it's been a blessing out of that.
The number one question that I get is, Dr. Joel, what Bible translation do you use? After the last couple of years doing a deep dive into various Bible translations and the translation philosophy that's used for them, I have landed on the Christian Standard Bible, the CSB Bible. It is phenomenal. I couldn't recommend it more. And my friends over at Lifeway gave me a code, CSBJM5. So if you go to lifeway.com and you can explore all the various Bibles, the different binding options that they have, and different styles, specialty, like if you want to dig into archaeology or apologetics or different types of study notes, they're all there for you and you get a discount on them. I would highly encourage you to check out the CSB Bible. Chris, I don't know that everybody knows this about you. I didn't know this until you and I were talking. Like, you are a legitimate studio musician drummer. Like, you're phenomenal. To the point, and I won't mention names, but like there have been some very well-known, house-known names that have been like, hey, why don't you come and work for us? Like, why don't you come and do this? Like, there have been these opportunities, and an earlier conversation I had was with a gal named Paula Ferris. I'm not sure if you guys know Paula.
I love Paula.
Okay, so Paula and I were talking. She had a nice quick trip, big old jug while we were talking. So she was on brand throughout the entire thing. But one of the things that I'm so grateful for what Paula was talking about is just the place of women being able to thrive in their vocation. And when I was talking to her about that, literally the image that came into my mind was like, oh, that's Chris and Hill. Like that's it. They crushed it. They figured it out. Like, that's what they're doing. And I would say, and this is the hard part, like this is the vulnerability. There might be some guys like out there that are like, wait a minute, you want me, like, God, you're calling me to like maybe put a pause on something that I want to do vocation, and you're seeing your wife, like, in terms of her career, just consistently, talk us through that as much as you want to, or as little as you want to. But it's something that fascinates me about you is, you carry the cloak of humility in who you are. And so I'm going to like celebrate that part of you. I know Hill will, cause I know you're not going to do it yourself. So I had to just bring it out, but I want you to talk us through, like, cause there's something for us to learn, about how you process and see life, and how humility really is the cloak, I think, of what you wear on a day in and day out basis.
I think I would start by, at least my journey has been kind of trying to unpack and always viewing vocation and vocational formation along with my faith, and kind of I think one of the loudest reasons for men that is an odd disconnect, or it's hard to make sense of how you would not be working and be home all the time or be taking care of the children. I think it's just there's some work we have to unpack some of the layers and the motivations of why we work or what we're working for. One of the lines I say a lot out loud to myself more, but I say it together too. It's just, what are you fighting for? What am I fighting for, both in the small day-to-day moves, but especially in those macro conversations of like, I'm pursuing things with how I'm choosing to spend my time. What am I ultimately fighting for? Am I trying to make an extra certain number per month or per year? Or what are the real motivations, being honest? So I'm so thankful you're connecting us with a self-awareness, that just awareness fact of humility, because I think that's such the crux of it, is having to take time to look internally and really look at, why do I have to be working, or why do I really want to be working, and why is it scary to be not working, or why do I feel shame if I'm not working full time? Why does that threaten me or rub up against something in me? Those pieces that's messy work, but it's really important. I think that vocational aspect of our spiritual lives, it's not this added piece outside of like walking with the Lord and then you have a job somewhere, or you're a mom or dad at home kind of, but then you walk with the Lord in your faith space. It's not so disjointed as most of us were kind of presented, I think, growing up. That vocational formation is just important. So I do think about what I'm really fighting for, and when I start to prioritize those clearly, it's my wife and my children are so important, and then the financial part, I would like to be providing, but I also don't have to be providing the financial part. So then I start to look at, well, what's going to make me go stir crazy if I don't have something to do? Because some of that is necessary. You have to wrestle that down. So finding, what is that, have to be a full-time job, or is God asking you to take care of the kids and then have your outlets here where you have hobbies or passions or pursuits alongside, ministry aspects alongside?
Yeah.
It's not just you're working or you're at home. It's not, it's not as disjointed as I think it quickly gets. Is that
something? Yeah, that was great. I also think too, like, and this bumps up against other parts of our human condition of just, if it's not a permanent choice either, like the choice that Chris made to stay at home with our kids, these are seasons. And so I think so many times it's so scary to step aside and do something else, because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be behind. Like the lies that we tell ourselves, like thinking about a stay-at-home dad, then entering back into the workforce, which stay-at-home dadding is the hardest job. I mean,
it's legit, y'all.
The hardest job, but it is to remember and to not go into that seat of feeling like of scarcity, of like, no, there's going to be things God's going to provide, and this is a season, and investing in the lives and the time with our kids in these foundational years. Those are just like the things that we weigh and that we talk about, and that, we are just, I'm so grateful that Chris just so willingly like wanted to step into that seat for our family. And I think that's the thing, is just remembering, like, you're not making a permanent choice. You're investing in what you love and what you're motivated by, which is the health of your family and the thriving of your children. But that isn't like, when they get to school, you're going to have a lot of time, and there's going to be time to pursue other things. And, it changes and evolves. And I think when you're making that big decision, it's hard to remember that sometimes, because you're overwhelmed by the fear of like, but who am I going to be? What am I going to do in there? Have more time?
Yeah.
Is there going to be something for me? And I believe that there will be, like, God will provide those things.
Yeah, that's so good. Man, there's so many directions I want to go. One of them, I want to go back to what you said, Chris, about self-awareness. So there's this, okay, like self-awareness is this interesting thing. It's something that we all want, but it almost feels like, is the animal the ostrich? You know, like the ostrich that sticks its head in the sand, and it's like, if I stick my head in the sand, like I can't say anything, so clearly there's nothing out in the world that can bother me. And you're like, dude, there is a tow truck that's about to crush you, you know, and you're just so not self-aware. And I do think that humility, as I've studied this, is like the gift of self-awareness, where you can gently, maybe forcefully, like maybe like in different situations and circumstances, you can work through these things, but you've got the confidence that God is with you, the people of God are with you, the Spirit of God is with you, that self-awareness that you are not alone. And yet the fear, and that's what you were kind of talking about, Hill, is the fear is, but what if he's not? You know, like what if it's not going to be okay? What if my outcomes aren't going to play themselves out? And it's like fear seems to be the undercurrent that pushes away from humility, because it's like, I'm fearful that my weaknesses are going to find me out, my limitations are going to find me out, my inability is going to find me out, and the only way to deal with that is to find more security through my own strength and power, and to find more confidence in me cultivating all these things on my own. And all that does at the end of the day is just leave us absolutely distraught. Like, it makes us more vulnerable. It exposes more weaknesses. And I think what ends up happening is we despise those weaknesses instead of being okay and saying, oh, wait, this weakness is an invitation for me to be in greater intimacy and trust with God, who's the source of all strength, you know? So in the book, I wanted to end with the story about Jacob. I think Jacob is brilliant. I think he's interesting. I think his whole wrestling with God is fascinating to me. And y'all, it got cut. So Carrie, if you're listening, it's okay. I know why you cut it. It was important, but I'm going to bring it back here. And the thing that I loved about the story about Jacob is that when he wrestles with God, he leaves that wrestling with a limp, you know? And in the ancient world, like, a limp is devastating. You're walking 99% of the play. Like, you're walking everywhere. Can you imagine? And I'm thinking, like, if I'm Jacob, I'm just like, listen, I clearly have wrestled with Yahweh. He clearly is like the creator of all things. So, hey, by the way, before you leave, you mind touching that same spot that you dislocated when you touched, to just hook a brother up, like to make it okay? And yet he doesn't. And it says that Jacob basically limped along for the rest of his life. And what I've actually come to the conclusion is that limp is not evidence of God's displeasure. It's actually forever a marked reality for him to remember God's kindness, that God is with him, that God is present, that weakness is a gift. When I look at the both of you and I go, man, I think there's a lot of people that will only ever see or perceive and look at like the height of the success, the opportunity, and whatever else. But I just have this inkling, and you and I have not talked about this, so I'm going out on a little bit of a limb here. I've got this inkling that everybody's got a Jacob story at some point. That the people that I've been the most drawn to, that I find a kindredness of heart and spirit, are people that have experienced weakness, they've experienced pain, they're more aware of their vulnerability and their need for Jesus. So if the both of you look back at the course of your life, it might be the same moment, it might be a different moment. What is that holy humility moment that is the Jacob, you know, dislocated his hip, and you're still walking with that invisible reality, but you now look at that and go, gosh, that was God's kindness, not his displeasure?
I mean, we definitely have those moments.
Yeah.
Marked throughout.
Yeah.
Questions which of all the rounds to share, yeah, we're I think what I would point to is over the past couple years, a succinct way to say it is I as we've started getting into 5-6 years, I guess 5 years ago, we started to do more therapy and counseling, and probably 2 or 3 years into that, I kind of hit another round of my just bumping up against the next tier of self-awareness that I needed to get through, and I could feel, uh, now looking back, it was so evidently the Holy Spirit guiding me into that, or shoving me into that very, very politely. Um, and I had one or two. I started to, as I was working through, just feeling the struggles of communicating that we were hitting, and one by one, all the closest brothers in arms in my life and mentors kind of started mirroring back the same language, because I was going to them like, you're supposed to go, you're supposed to shoot straight, let's express, let's glean wisdom. And they kind of one by one started looking at me going, do you have some anger towards your wife? Do you have some resentment towards your wife? And I was like, well, no, that's silly. No, I'm just hurt and I'm wounded and I'm sad about this stuff. I don't have any anger. And one by one, they all kind of started feeding back the same thing of, I don't want to hear that I'm angry. I don't think I am. And it took a couple months for me to really see what I would describe as, it's funny you use the phrase cloak of humility, because I think I really was viewing humility, really that was the best word to describe. I was viewing it as an external thing to put on because it's going to make things better. It's the right thing to put on, as opposed to a real fruit of the spirit approach of, this is an inward thing that is going to pour out of me.
Yeah.
It's not this thing, son, that you can just grab off the coat rack every morning before everybody gets up, wrap yourself in it, and
So
then
good.
go bumping along through everybody. Because it really is ultimately what I was doing, especially with her, is I knew what I was supposed to do is have this kind of a posture. But my men in my life were like, they're seeing under the cloak and seeing, yeah, you're ticked off inside, you're holding resentment, so you can cover it only to such an extent. Like Jim talks about holding that beach ball underwater and it's gonna start popping
Yeah.
off.
It's
It's
gonna
really
pop
it was
up.
really that. So I would point to that more recently in the past two. I guess it was really 2 years ago that hit its surface. But I think about that often because I can start to sense when the cloak isn't working. I see that, oh, I'm starting to poke, or I'm pushing, or I'm bumping. I remember what that feels like, and that must mean it's not coming from internally. I have to pause and get quiet with the Lord again, because I'm trying to do it out of strength and out of the right thing to do, versus this is going to pour out of me more fluidly and more, yeah, just because I know that posture is where I want to be, because He's guiding me into that. And I'm sitting with the Holy Spirit. That spirit led self awareness is really what I think has been the theme of the past year for me, especially, is fleshing that out. It's not just me, head knowledge, self aware, ostrich head looking around. It's spirit led self awareness of, search me, oh God, and know, and investigate me. It's but I just want to jump to, and then guide me in what I should do. Search me, my heart, test, and then lead me in the way everlasting. I just want to jump to the leading part because I can do it. And he's like, no, no, no. I actually need you to sit and be with me. The leading actually happens. You don't get to do it. It's like, just sit and be with me, son. So it's the internal of that has been. I'm starting to recognize it when it seeps out and leaks out.
Yeah.
So good.
I mean, I think one of the things that has definitely been a limp has been when we miscarried, in between our oldest daughter Isley and our twins, and just when you experience that type of grief, just like any grief, it never goes away. It just continues to change form, and some days are more intense than others. But I would say that experience has, you talked about thy will wouldn't have been written, without our miscarriage. Like, that's what we wrote it about, was coming out of that. I actually went and wrote it with Bernie Herms and Emily Weisband, like, still in the process of miscarrying. And I just so happened to feel good enough that day to go and sit and pour my heart out to and tell them what was going on. And so when I think about the ways in which God has just continued to show Himself faithful in the midst of such hard time, I think about that song, and it's in that season of our life. And I mean, it's really been so, and the chorus of that song that's scripture. That's the prayer that Jesus prayed, that taught us how to pray, and so to see it continue to, even, that song came out in 2016, and it's like, just recently I've had more people come up to me and talk to me about it than I have in a year and a half. And it's because that chorus, because it's scripture, those are the living, breathing words of the Lord. And it just is always, is always, and I am just so thankful, as much pain and hard as that experience was, and still brings me great sadness, most days. It's a limp that I am thankful for, because it, like you mentioned, it reminds me of total dependency on God, because without him, the sadness that I feel that there's not a baby in our house that we wanted to be here on this side of heaven, like, that would crush me. I wouldn't be able to get out of bed every day, and and so that is the goodness of God.
I would say too, there's the dependency, and then there's also it's the constant reminder of the intimacy that he brought out of that too. It's not just this. I think dependency, especially culture, that doesn't sound fun. It doesn't really draw me into wanting to want that, but it's linked. It's always it's linked with like
closeness.
Yeah, the like you met me in a way only you could, and that is such a lasting mark that is so sweet and so personal and so only you and me, for both of us in different ways. So I think that's the other piece too. It's a dependency, but it's also linked with such an emotional and an intimate depth of next phase of where we went with him, where he brought us in through that.
That's so good. Well, thank you both for sharing so honestly. And man, I think we went through the gamut of emotions on this one. But that's life, That is so what life is, walking with Jesus. I think there are a few people that might be skeptical still, and they're like, Joel, I'm just not convinced that humility is the way of Jesus, which, by the way, it actually is. Jesus says, come and follow me, those of you that are lowly and gentle and humble in heart. But anyways, that's for a different teaching. You can read the chapter on that. What would in like 30 seconds, like if you were just like, it's the coffee person, right? Like handing you the cup of coffee, and you're just like, I've got one shot here to point people to why humility ought to be the soil of the life that you cultivate everything else in. What would the benefit be? What is that value that you found personally in your life?
Yeah.
I think I would say the thing about the humility of Jesus that resonates with me and has impacted every moment by moment through my day would be how, not just how relationally he operated, but how much he was so focused on people in front of him. And was not, he still was obviously on mission and moving towards what he was called to do, but no part of that was dictating how he met the people that were in front of him and who he, I feel such a pull to be focused on short and long-term goals. And if I'm not setting those and then reassessing those constantly, and then that kind of distracts me from what's in front of me, kind of the window pane thing. If I'm like constantly looking through and out the window, I'm not ever seeing the bars. They blur a lot. And so I don't want to miss the people when I start to pay more attention to who are, and that the humility of staying present more, remembering that these are his kids in front of me. I'm one of his kids, but this is his child in front of me that's I'm working alongside of. That changes everything of like trying to get through to the next task,
Yeah.
I believe that when I think about what it means, what it brings to live in humility, try to embody humility, it's peace was the word that came up in my heart when you asked that question. I mean, it's I think we all know, whether it's a conversation, whether it's something we do for a living, whether it's what we watch or what we listen to, when we go through our day and we get to the end of it and don't have much to cringe about, I believe that's God's kindness in giving us that humble spirit to move through a day. And those are the things that and this is kind of vocationally, but when I think about the things that have been so life-giving to create with my bandmates, with, other things. And when I get home and I'm like, oh my gosh, there was only life was planted today, and the conversations, and then what the song's about. And like, it's just the most peaceful feeling. When is in fault, as faulty and flawed as we are, to know that, and not in performance, and just in true, just wanting to move through a day the way that in a way that would make God smile. That's what I say to my daughter. It's like, did you, it feels good when we make choices that we know that would make God smile, like, and that's what I try to think about. That was a ramble. I'm sorry, but that's
no, that's so good. That might be one of the most, like, I'm going to check if I can still make some additions to the book, because that was that's so beautiful. I actually think about, like, that moment when MJ walked in, like, she's supposed to take a nap. My door's supposed to be locked. I forgot to lock the door. She walks in and like, totally in the middle of this recording, everybody's going to hear it. You're going to see it on the video. But like, the thing that made me smile when I saw her was she had her little puppa in her mouth, and she just, like, walks in with her little pacifier in her mouth. She calls it her puppa. And I just think, like, what would it be like to just think, like, man, every time we live out of that inner place, like what you were talking about, Chris, the inner place of humility, that it just comes out, that this is a thing that just makes our Heavenly Father smile, like, puts a grin on his face, And I'm like, it's so interesting. Like, I'm like, okay, what's the value for you? And it's like, well, no, what's the value that it brings to God? Like, right? Like, isn't so, I don't know. I just thought that was so profound.
Yes.
Well, thank you both so much. I am so grateful for you. Thank you for embodying a life of humility, and I'm just grateful for your friendship.
Thank you so much, Joel. We love you.